So this week I had the pleasure of talking with Rodolphe, the founder of PotLoc. PotLoc has a pretty spectacular story. So Rodolphe starts off and he's a first-time founder. He's super young. His first idea, believe it or not, was to crowdsource ideas for retail stores. So literally his pitch was, you're a landlord, you have some open slots somewhere on some street. I'll stand outside of that retail store, and as people walk by, I'll ask them what they think should open here, right? What retail store should take over that spot. And I'll collect all that data, I'll give it to you, and at least that way you can get the right tenant and they'll stay there for a long time. And he signed all of one customer. And that's in spite of being, all over the news. Like in Montreal, they made a huge splash about this. That's how he started. Today, his company's doing over $10 million a year in revenue. And it's not doing anything close to what he started off doing. This guy's actually gone through 5 pivots. He got punched in the face so hard by COVID that he went from pretty close to 10 million a year all the way back to zero. He went from 10 to zero all the way back to 10 million in ARR. It's a spectacular story. Welcome to the Product Market Fit Show, brought to you by Mistral, a seed stage firm based in Canada. I'm Pablo. I'm a founder turned VC. My goal is to help early stage founders like you find product market fit. Rodolphe, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Pablo. It's a pleasure.
It's exciting. So, we were chatting about this before, and I think you have a really unique story just because of the number of, now you've got real traction, over 8 figures, lots of customers, but you went through 5 pivots to get to this place, which is not something I hear about every day. I think, changing things around, transitioning, pivoting is common, but doing it that many times and to the degree that you did it, each pivot was actually pretty meaningful, is not normal. And so that's really what we'll be talking about today is how to find product market fit as told through these 5 pivots that you went through. And we'll go through each idea, but really focus in on the transitioning, because I think what's really compelling here from a new founder's perspective is, when do you know that you should let go of an idea and embrace a new one, right? Like you want to be not just scrappy, but relentless. Like you don't want to give up. And yet if you ignore what's out there, you'll miss some of the bigger things that are right in front of you the whole time. So I hope that'll come out as we talk through the story. So maybe just for starters, I'm curious, like what was the first iteration of PotLoc? What was his first idea? And maybe just provide some context around that too.
Again, thank you for having me. Super happy to share my story. It's a mix between a personal and a professional story as any entrepreneur. Maybe very, very quickly about me. As you can tell from my accent right away, I come from France. I grew up in France, moved to Montreal when I was 17, 31 right now. So I've basically spent half of my life in France and half of my life in Canada. So basically, it's very simple. I was studying in HEC Montreal. My today's co-founder used to be my roommate, to name it Louis de la Houstre. And back in 2013, so 10 years ago now, we had that very simple idea. So we're working in our neighborhood and we saw all these vacant stores. And we're like, what would be great? It would be for the local residents to choose what new store they'd like to have in these empty stores, because we're consumers in our neighborhood. We know exactly what's needed in that neighborhood. We know exactly where we would go. So it would be great to pick the locals' brains, basically, in order to know what tenant or what merchant to install in a vacant store. So we started with that idea, and we very quickly we're hands-on founders. So very quickly we picked up the phone, and you've got the phone number of all the landlord or the brokers, right, in these window displays. So we called the one which was the closest from our place, and we're like, okay, can we give a try to a startup idea we have? Can we invade your space and survey people, basically? So this is what we've done in December 2013. We revamped the space, cleaned it, and we had, that massive coffee machine as well. And we're basically intercepting people with our buddy in the street and ask them to come inside. And we had a little type form. It wasn't even type form. It was a Google form on iPads. And we're, asking questions to local residents, like, what is your postal code? Where do you go to do your grocery? And a couple of easy, basic questions. And the last one was, what type of store would you like to have in this very vacant store? So we've done that, and it was a success. It was a popular success, I must say. Before I think about pivoting, it was a massive success, to be honest. The company was not even incorporated; that we were invited in all the most famous Quebec TV shows and radio shows. Everybody was talking about the power to choose your next merchant. It was collaborative, smart city. We're ticking all the cases. Like it was
topic.
Yeah, it was perfect. So the name PotLoc did not even exist because we incorporated the company in March 2014. But in January 2013, you can check online. I was invited in many TV shows speaking about PotLoc, the new startup, and we're like, okay, man, we're in something. Like for sure, we're in something. It's a popular success. We're in something. So we basically had a few phone calls from landlords because the business model was very simple. We're helping landlords to rent long term. So as a landlord, if you want to rent long term, you call PotLoc. We're going to do a physical operation in your store, and then we're going to give you the data in order for you to know which tenant you should rent to. That was the business model. And we had one landlord, my very first customer, I will always remember about him, Pierre Barsalou, it's his name, called us one day. I was like, okay, I've got a vacant store. I want to do your thing. It's great, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, how much does it cost? And I had no clue. I was like, okay, I don't know, 8,000. And he was like, oh, perfect. What's the name on the check? And I was like, PotLoc Inc., hoping the business, the name was available because we were too broke to pay the law firm in order to incorporate the company. And with that very first 8K check, we had actually enough money to pay for the lawyers, to incorporate the company, create the bank account, and cash in the check. And thanks God, the name PotLoc was available, and the .com too. So we did that. It was our initial business model, very first one. And after that very first success we had with Pierre Barsalou local, I took my bicycle and I was calling every single landlord of vacant stores down in town, right? Sad truth is after 1 year of hustling, and believe me, I can hustle when I want to hustle, we had 0 customer. and the end of the story of that first pivot is we've been so vocal, we've been so visible with that project that we got the one landlord in Montreal that was, actually that bought on our value proposition. All the other ones were like, well, I'm not going to pay you 8 or 10K without any guarantee that I'm going to find a tenant afterwards. Like it didn't make any sense for anyone. And all the ones that were represented by brokers, well, brokers don't have money to spend pre-transaction. Like it didn't make sense for anyone.
Was this maybe just a question on that? Like, was this the classic like recent grad type idea, which I've had as well, many people have had, where it's like truly an aha moment, like there's no research or unique insight beside it. It's just like, you just thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if, and then you just went after it. Like, is that kind of what happened with this idea one?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we had this idea in like October 2013, and in December 2013, we were in that space intercepting people, like 0 business model. I remember I was following I was still a student back then, and we had entrepreneurial whatever courses, and our teacher was telling us the map doesn't make the territory. So like, who cares about writing a business model? You need a business case, a business plan. Sorry, you should go in the field and try your idea out. And I was like, okay, that's the best advice ever. And I still think it's the best advice ever. And this is basically what we've done. We had 0 business plan, 0. We just tried out that idea. We had a false hope that it was a great idea, and it wasn't. And after 1 year, we completed our studies basically. And we had that project that, was successful early. We had 1 customer, but we were in the middle of nowhere, ending our studies. We needed cash, and we're like, okay, what's the next move, basically? And it was time for the first pivot, basically.
So in that case, just to summarize maybe idea one, you went into it with little customer discovery. It was just kind of jumped right into it, got a lot of hype around it, which I'm sure was a lot of fun. But ultimately after a year, I mean, you really had kind of nothing going for it. So it was pretty clear. There was really no question around, is this working or is it not working? It just wasn't working. I think that was clear to you and your co-founder. So what do you do at that point?
Yeah. So, we've been, we're salespeople, my co-founder and I. So we're like, no sales, no gain, no food on the table, like period. Like, when you cannot earn money to eat, it forces you to do a pivot, right? It was not like we had unlimited cash to start that company. So then we made an interesting pivot, a fancy one. So we're like, okay, perfect. We need to go online. It doesn't work because it's too manual, and like we need to go online, and we need to take the problem the other way around. Instead of registering vacant stores, we should register retail projects and have the local residents to back these projects, vote for this project in their neighborhood. Okay, so we launched in end of 2014, early 2015, sort of a Kickstarter platform, except that you replace money by a local vote, basically. So what I mean? So we had plenty of very fancy. It was, again, a massive success, like pretty crazy. We had like 100,000 users on the platform after 6 months, which is great. And basically, we're good enough to attract people like you and me, like people who wanted to start a retail project. We had crazy retail projects. The one that did a massive hit at the beginning was the first cat cafe in Montreal. So, you can go get a cafe and pet a cat. It's not my thing, but a lot of people love it. And it was on the platform, and people fought with their life in order to have that cafe settled on in their neighborhood. So it was like Griffintown against Le Plateau Montréal, against Rosemont, against, all the different Montreal neighborhoods. So we had all these fancy retail projects registered on the platform, and plenty of local people voting for this project. And our idea was to ask to upsell basically the entrepreneurs behind these projects for them to have access to more analytics. Okay. So if you wanted to know, the profile of the people who have backed you, if you wanted to send an email to your community, all of these were upsell features. But the truth is we've spent a solid year working on that. Again, it was a success. PotLoc.com was a hit. But we were able to, get sometimes $1,000 out of this entrepreneur, because, this retail entrepreneur, they're not rich people. They were almost as broke as us. And, some of them were able to pay 1K, but, it was nothing, like it wasn't enough at all to put food on the table. And still today, the funny thing is when I take a walk in the city of Montreal, I recognize some of the stores that were on my platform 8 years ago awesome. Now, that are, open and running. And these people were serious about their project, and they did it without us at the end of the day, because we closed that. But still, there are plenty of stores in Montreal. You can go to Café Sfouf, you can go to De la Brume dans mes lunettes, to Café Chaleureux. All these retail stores that do exist today used to be on PotLoc.com at one point.
Let me ask you something about your thinking as you went from idea 1 to 2. Like, did you and your co-founder sit down and say, here's what worked, here's what didn't work? I'm just curious as to why you decided to do what you did, and just what the dialogue was like at that point.
So basically, there is a sort of intermediate pivot that I'm skipping to keep the story short. But when we launched PotLoc.com, initially it was with all the vacant stores in it. So it was like idea 1 online, basically. See what I mean? Scalable idea 1. And we're like, when you were going on our platform, it was disgusting. Like it was pages and pages of destroyed window displays. There is nothing more ugly than an ugly store, that's a vacant store, right? It's literally an empty window display. So like, okay, our platform is the less sexy platform on the planet. We need to take the problem the other way around. It's going to be way more sexy to back a retail project than to try to find a feed for a vacant store. So this is how we actually moved from idea 1 to idea 2. We had a sort of intermediate step going from offline to online.
And I think, if I'm being clear, the part that you missed was effectively like willingness to pay, right? It was still kind of on the business model side.
Yeah, exactly. But we made one major discovery with the second pivot. They found a lot of value because they wanted to open, and they were all wandering between neighborhood A, B, and C, and they had plenty of data. So they found a lot of value. And basically what we discovered, it was back in 2015, like Instagram did not exist, and influencers were not a thing. You need to jump a little bit in the past. And what we discovered all these users, these 100,000 users we had on the platform, they were all coming from Facebook communities that these people had gathered, basically. So, the entrepreneur behind Cat Cafe had a Facebook page and plenty of likes, and it was posted like back me on PotLoc.com to let me know where I should open. And it was sending massive wave of traffic on our website. So we were like, okay, social networks, and it was a discovery back then. Social networks can bring tons of users. Again, like, don't get me wrong, it was a commercial failure in a sense that we're still not able to eat thanks to that, but it was a popular success once again. Like we had, a lot of people were actually on our platform.
One thing that you kept throughout really all ideas is a focus on local data. Is that because it's something that appealed to you and your co-founder kind of like emotionally, or was there just something that you kept seeing, like there's something there and you just kind of kept tackling it in different ways?
Well, the sense of belonging to your neighborhood is very strong, and I still believe that, and it's still something we're surfing on, like in today's version of PotLoc. Like, it is something we've discovered. Maybe other people have discovered that in other part of the world, but we're like, okay, we're on something. Like, I remember back then the only startup, thriving startup that I was following that was actually on that same segment was Nextdoor, which was kind of the was very early for them as well, but they were the local social network, and this is kind of where we wanted to go, right? That was the initial idea. We're like, okay, the sense of belonging to your neighborhood is strong, and there is something to build around that.
It's worth mentioning that did really come through. Like, as you say, each idea was a success in its own right. Sure, it didn't bring in a lot of revenue, but it wasn't just crickets. I mean, it was bringing in a lot of attention, a lot of people that cared, which I guess would kind of keep giving you a signal that, people really do care about their neighborhood. And again, there's something there, and you just kind of keep tackling it in different angles. So anyways, idea 2 is going, you've got MAUs, you've got visitors. What you don't have is revenue once again. So what's the next discussion?
So the next one is very interesting, but I've seen a lot of startups starting with monthly active users, etc. But at the end of the day, we had very simple needs. We needed to pay the rent and buy food. Okay, and when your startup is not paying you, and I'm an expatriate, so we didn't have any family to back. Like, literally, if I wasn't able to pay the rent, I would have slept outside. I've got family in France. I could go back to France, but like in Canada, we were expatriates. We were alone. So again, it wasn't a mental exercise. We were really trying to win money in order to live with our business. So it wasn't a tough call to actually make a pivot. We're like, not paying the rent, we need to shift. We don't have money anymore. So it was a very easy conversation.
Maybe a question on that. Did you even try to raise through any of this, like from angels or anything? No. Okay.
No. We weren't a tech startup. So first of all, we're 10 years ago in Montreal. You had only one VC firm, one accelerator that was Founder Fuel, applied then there, and we've been declined. It was just we had one shot, one thing, and we weren't able to enter. Period. So no, not at all. Like, we weren't raising at all. But we raised on pivot number 3, just to give a teaser. So how did pivot number 3 arrive? That one is magical. So imagine we have a platform with all the coolest future retail projects of Montreal. Okay. You've got people working for the city of Montreal, whose job is to revitalize dying commercial arteries. Okay, they're called commissaires au développement économique. They're like people working for the city or for the different sub-cities or neighborhoods of Montreal. And these people, they were calling us. They were like, okay, I'm managing Boulevard Gouin in the north of the city, which is really, it's not very sexy, right? And we're like, okay, perfect. And he was like, okay, what can I do to get your super hipster retail stores to open in my street? And I was like, well, it's kind of defeating the purpose of the platform. I won't tell my dear entrepreneurs to go open where it's actually a dying neighborhood. We all know that. Like it won't work. However, Mr. Commissary, I can actually work for you on surveying your local population about what they want to have in their neighborhood using social networks, because we've realized with these entrepreneurs that social networks was a super powerful tool to actually bring voters or respondents on the platform. And and they were like, yes, why not? Actually, it's a good idea. It will help me frame which type of store I should attract in my area. Let's do that. And I remember very, very precisely the first contract we had. The guy told us, okay, how much does it cost? I Googled what's the maximum threshold for not doing an RFP because you're dealing with public. And it was $25,000, okay? Tax included. And I was like, okay, it's going to be $24,999 tax included. And the guy told me, okay, let's go. Let's do that. So suddenly, okay, we go from trying to rob $1,000 to retail entrepreneurs to $25,000 contract with City X, okay? And I was like, okay, perfect. We're rich. Let's go. And this is when we've actually started to do something which is similar to what PotLoc does today. We were basically setting, local campaigns on Facebook. It was mainly Facebook back then, saying, well, we've got a survey about the next future stores you want to have in your neighborhood, help your city build your future, blah, blah, blah. Smart city technology. Okay. It worked like crazy. So we bought a car and I was riding my little Toyota Matrix. I was meeting with every city council of Quebec. I've done all of them. We've signed with all the cities you can think of in Quebec. We've signed with them. Joliette, La Malbaie, Sainte-Julienne, all the different neighborhoods, 25K, 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 25K. So in 2016, we are just my co-founder and we are generating 400K, okay? 95% gross margin. So like we're the king of the world. And this is when we actually integrating an accelerator called InnoCité, which was the smart city. So smart city was really the thing at one point. I don't know if you remember, but it was a trend. And it was the smart city accelerator of Fund of Fuel. So like we made it to Fund of Fuel, but through.
I remember when street lights were supposed to be smart and every car was going to be connected. And...
Exactly.
I'm still waiting.
Yeah, exactly. So we're like exactly in that trend at the good moment. Like we're a smart city tech, build smart neighborhoods was our tagline at that time, et cetera, et cetera. So we're in 2016 and we're making good money. Like for the first time of our life, my co-founder and I were like, we're clearing a good salary. So we're able to actually start hiring our very first employees who are working on the platform. It was our CTO who worked on the platform, et cetera, et cetera.
And the product, like at this point, are you effectively doing what like a PR agency or like a market research agency would do? I mean, you're just more clever in that you know how to use Facebook, or is there a real kind of product at this stage?
No. It was basically ultimate bootstrap version of what our product does today with machine learning and super fancy thing. It was literally we're creating questionnaires on Typeform. Okay. Then we had a link. Then we're creating local advertising campaigns on Facebook. Okay. Bring people to fill our questionnaire with, we're doing like, it was crazy back then. No idea of what is a weighting. Like, do we have enough female, male? Are we only serving, which tranche of the population, only the poor, the rich, or the like, it wasn't representative at all. Like we weren't doing proper market research, but we didn't know. So it was a honest mistake. Yeah. So we're basically doing that. And at the end, Typeform was giving us a big Excel spreadsheet. My co-founder was crunching the numbers. So basically you take all the questions, you cross them with the other questions and you try to find, significant deviations from the means. And I was doing a big InDesign report, 50 pages, and tell to the city councils what they should be doing, where their neighborhood, giving my recommendation as a urban planner, which I wasn't, awesome. Telling them what to do. And literally the product was me printing out like 30 copies of the report of like 50 pages, distributing that to the big board, whatever, a big meeting they all have once per month in these cities. And then I was talking for like 2 hours explaining all the results of the survey work we've conducted with them. So that was pivot number 3, and we did raise money on.
And when you raised that money, well, how much did you raise, and what was the story? Was the story to just keep doing that?
Yeah, so we raised. It was a pre-seed round. We called it a pre-seed round afterwards. $800K with business angels and BDC. Actually, BDC Super Seed Fund. The storyline was we're a smart city technology. We're going to conquer the world one city at a time. Period. We're generating like $400K of revenues with only, I don't know, we had like 20 or 30 customers back then. Well, it's scalable. We're going to hire account executives that are going to do what I'm doing alone today. We're going to actually approach all these cities and sell the hell out of them. That was the idea.
And where did you hit a cap? Was it going beyond Quebec, or was it just dealing with cities in general?
We hit a glass ceiling right after raising in January 2017, because I was calling back. So everybody was super happy about the product. Like people were super happy. Like our customers were delighted. And I called them back. I was like, okay, so new year, new study, new survey. What do you guys want to do? And they all told me the exact same answer. Like, but Rod, we're super satisfied, but you gave us work for the next 5 years. So until the next election, there is no business going from us to you. And I was like, come on. They were like, no. I mean, we have our urban planning is made on a period of like 5 to 10 years. They needed input when they were working on the big 5-10 years plan, etc. They had these inputs, so they had no need for any extra survey work, and they had limited budget that was pre-validated. Like, it didn't work basically. And I was like, okay, so we have no repeat business with these guys, and that's annoying. Like, we knew. We're still young funders, but we're like, okay, no repeat business.
That's tough. Yeah,
it's gonna be tough. So we're making a good living, but no repeat business. It's gonna be tiring. Like, no repeat unless 5 or 10 years waiting time between two orders. It was way too long. So it leads us to pivot number 4. So we're starting to build seriously the technology behind in parallel, right? So we are hiring a bunch of devs that are working on all the statistical models. We're discovering what a representative sampling means. We're starting to seriously do the work we needed to do. We had inbound calls, true story, of shopping centers. So I remember very well 2 brands: First Capital, which is still a big real estate owner in Canada, and BTB. Okay, I think it's a more local one in Montreal. And they called us. They were like, "Okay, guys, I am a citizen of neighborhood X where you've done some work. What you do is fantastic. I need the same thing for my mall." Okay, they called us, and my initial reaction was to tell them no. Like, people answer for free on Facebook because they care about their neighborhood. Nobody cares about their mall, so it's really not as sexy as a neighborhood. So nobody will answer to my surveys. It won't work. Okay. So that time we had a tactic, which was it's a French expression that we made up. It was called PPP. PPP stands for Paradis des prunes perdues. So in good English, it would be like paradise for lost quotes, basically. So it's basically we overpriced it in order for them to never sign it. Okay, so that was our thing. So I overpriced, like, I don't know, it was I can't remember the thing, but it was super overpriced. I was like, okay, so that they won't sign it because I know it won't work. Okay, but they did sign it. So we're like, okay, so now we have to do the work on not a neighborhood, but a shopping mall. The truth is, we were snobbish. I was just, cool and young guy, and I thought everybody was, in love with their neighborhood. But people do have a sense of belonging to the mall they go every weekend. Like, it was just my own poor judgment. So we started to do the exact same work. If you think about it for a sec, there is not a lot of differences between a mall and a commercial street. The only difference is it's in a mall, it's the same landlord that owns all the vacant stores, whereas in a street, it is usually several landlords. Not always the case. Like in Montreal, you've got a couple of huge landlords that own a lot of stores, but basically that's the idea. And we did the exact same work. Okay. I forgot to mention that in all these things, we're still putting as an upsell function the fact that we're doing an on-site event. So in all these cities and all these malls, I was spending my weekends over there, still intercepting people physically. We knew it was really less efficient than a good old Facebook campaign, because in a day we're able to survey like 100 people versus on Facebook we're able to get 1,000 people within the same day. Like it was crazily less efficient, but still we're still doing that. So I've spent, and my girlfriend, who became my wife later, has done every single weekend with me, intercepting people and asking them questions on an iPad.
Do you still go to malls?
Well, I've got a trauma from that for sure. So we've done that. Like you've got pictures of me in front of a Walmart intercepting people. We've done that for sure. 20, 30 weekends in these 2 years. Like we're literally doing that.
Why did you do it, by the way? Like you had employees at that time, no?
Early employees. We were like 4 or 5. We're all there.
I see.
We were like a hands-on founder. I think at the very end, the last 2 or 3 on-site operations, as we call them, I wasn't there, but I've done the vast majority. We're putting all the money that we're winning, we're actually investing it in the platform. We weren't paying ourselves huge salaries. We had like 1 or 2 employees and a bunch of interns, unpaid interns, and then we're paying big price to have devs to develop the platform, which was the right bet to do. Now that we're 5 years later, it was the right thing to do. Long story short, going back to my malls, so we do that for the 2 first customers, and they're super happy. Okay, and we're like, you know what? A company like Cadillac Review might actually be a better customer than City of whatever, because these guys own several malls. They have money. They are conducting research all the time, etc. So we decided to go all in on that vertical. So we started to, PotLoc not that long ago, like 2017, 2018, 2019. So these 3 years, we were a real estate consumer research technology. Okay, so it was made for malls, big landlords that were hiring us to get data to know, for new malls, to know which tenant they should rent to decide whatever, like plenty of decisions, etc. And by doing that, we also we started to work with retailers as well. As you can guess, have a mall and a Walmart takes 60% of the real estate. Well, these guys have a huge interest in watching the data as well. So we scaled PotLoc these 3 years based on real estate and retail model. So that's pivot number 4. And I raised money on that pivot number 4. So I'm not a smart city technology anymore. I'm in the real estate and retail world. And we raised our 20 million Series A on that one.
And that one was like, this is pivot 4 or 5, but you had real product market fit at this point.
Yeah, real product market fit. We opened an office in France. We're like 50 employees. We opened an office in France. I work with think about all the big real estate landlords in Canada and US. We work with them. We had Mall of America and Ivanhoe Cambridge, and all these guys were working with us. We had a crazy tech for them. They were able to survey shoppers and non-shoppers of their trade area, because that was our moat. Because you can survey shoppers by intercepting people in your mall, but you can never get your non-shoppers because they're not coming to your mall by definition. So you needed a tech like us to actually get people who live in the area, what we call the trade area, who should be shopping to your mall, but they are not shopping to your mall or your retail location for XYZ reason, and they needed to understand these reasons. And we're the only company in the world able to do that, period. So pretty powerful, right? When you think about, as a retailer or as a real estate manager, you need to understand these people who should be shopping at your place, who are not shopping at your place. You need to understand what you should be doing in order to get these people. So we did that. We scaled the revenue quite a bit. And I raised in July 2019, led by BrightSpark. I think I might have pitched Mistral.
We did, but don't remind me.
In 2019, 20 million series. Well, it was 2 tranches, whatever, but 20 million series A, led by BrightSpark, with the promise of, there are 50,000 shopping malls in the States, even more what we call big box retailers, because we're going after big box retailers. And this is our market.
And this is where, at this point where things are really hitting off, things are really going well, up and to the right. And I guess a year later, you take probably the biggest punch to the face that you've taken up to this point with COVID and the shutdown of malls. What, like, just walk me through like how that plays out from a revenue perspective, and just, I mean, you have a big team, like it's not just yourself anymore. Like, just walk me through the chaos that must have been.
So you saw it coming. It was the obvious pivot number 5. Of course, real estate, retail locations, physical locations. In 2019, everybody sees that fifth pivot coming. So we're doing great. March 2020, there is a virus coming from Wuhan that changed our lives. Overnight, we lost all our customers. Like, it was as sudden as that. Okay. I remember we were doing a super start in January, February 2020. We're at like 800K at Q1 2020, or something like that in terms of revenue. Only January, February, no March. And then March, overnight, and Q2 2020, we are at, I think, 150, something like that. So we go from 800 to 150. And we're like finishing the contracts we had delivered before. We're still recognizing some revenue that we booked earlier.
Right. There's nothing really there. Yeah.
We booked 0 net new revenue. Think about our customers. We're like, okay, we can survey your shoppers and non-shoppers in trade area. They're like, no, they're not coming. Like, we're closed. Like, what's the point? Like, we lost our value prop overnight. Okay. So, interesting time. We prepared the layoffs. Like, I was getting ready to file for bankruptcy. But it's not exactly the truth. I was getting ready to lay off people, but we had plenty of money because, remember, we closed our Series A in July 2019 and we weren't burning a lot of money. So I was sitting on like 17 million of available cash, burning like 300 per month, K per month. So I was like, we had free reins to pivot the company.
Maneuver, yeah.
So I made sure all the investors were aware of that. I'm like, okay, it's going to potentially kill a couple of your portfolio companies, not us, because we've got money. Let me time to turn the company around. And basically what happened is, back in December 2019, one of my sales rep, his name is Gaspard, in France, has been creative and accepted a deal. Okay. We had no sales engineers back then. That was out of our main practices. So basically, he said yes to Roland Berger, which is a German consulting firm, for a survey which wasn't, for the first time in PotLoc history, linked to a 1 kilometer trade area or 10 kilometers trade area. Okay, it was on, I don't even remember, on toothpaste, whatever, but at the scale of a country. Okay, so he did that. He sold it, and so we the tech was really ramping up at that time. So we had pretty solid tech already. So we put all the insights in there. We're like, okay, that's the trade area. So it's like a massive trade area. So it's not a trade area, it's a country actually. These are the profiles of people we need to get. These are the questions, blah, blah, blah. And we put that in our machine, and it worked. Like, we're able to actually get a representative sample at a country, broad as a country. So we've done 2 contracts, like 15K. Okay. Back in March 2020, I'm like, okay, you know what? They were super happy. We go all in on consulting firms. So suddenly I had plenty of people who had background in real estate, ex-brokers from Cadillac Value. And suddenly I'm like, okay, now guys, you call BCG, Bain, McKinsey, and you tell them we have data for them, easy to collect, et cetera. And we did that pivot. And at Q3 2020, we were at 1 million of revenue. So we're beating Q1 2020.
Wow.
We had 1 quarter completely down, and at Q3 we were completely back. Which was interesting is it was also a boom for consulting firms back then, because everybody was lost, like all the different industries in the world. So like these consulting firms were flat busy. They needed data all the time. It was also a perfect timing for, it was a massive behavior change within the society, right? Like we all started to work from home, etc. And everybody needed to survey the population, their target audience, to understand, will you still buy my food if it becomes a subscription? Like we've tested crazy things. Will people ever go back to the hairdresser in person, or should we send hairdresser to people's home for the rest of our lives? Like we've done all these studies again and again and again. And that was pivot number 5, and we skyrocketed with that one. So we basically realized that the little technology we had built years after years for first cities, then malls, then retailers, was actually perfectly up and running for any type of survey, multi-country, for any topic, anywhere in the world. And we end up today's value proposition, which is with PotLoc, you can ask the questions you want to the people you want in 3 days, wherever they are in the world. So today, the value, because I've only talked about what we've done in the past, but today the value proposition of PotLoc is we have access to the largest panel on earth, which is 4.4 billion active users. So we can survey whoever you want, everywhere in the world, and you choose the questions you want to ask them. And we guarantee to have fast turnaround time, competitive pricing, outstanding data quality, because we're intercepting people on social media. We're not tapping into a panel of professional respondents, outstanding data quality, and unmatchable reach. Like if you think about our fiercest competitor is an American company called Dynata. Their claim to fame is they have 62 million people on their panel. Well, we have 4.4 billion. So by definition, we can get Chihuahua owners who live in London, parents who live in Brooklyn, whose kids are suffering from dyslexia, Irish dairy farmers. Like these are the things we do. And we work, 70% of our business is made with management consulting firms. So think about all these big names. We have all of them. We do a lot of work for PE, for VC firm, like Mistral could be a customer. If you think about any due diligence work you have to do, well, we can get you a representative sample of any target you need to understand. And we also work with big brands. We help them understand their personas. We help them track their brand awareness, all the different brand attributes they have over time, telephone interviews and consumer panels by social media. And now we're well positioned to become the category leader in our field, basically.
That's awesome. You know, I think I have a couple more questions. One of them, pretty broadly, is just as you think through all of the pivots, something that comes out at me is how you were willing to let go of one thing and go all in on the other, how you were willing to listen to the next thing. Sometimes it was clear, like you had no revenue and a city offered you some revenue, but other times you had revenue, like from pivot 3 to 4, you had cities and, you know, at some point still made the decision to go all in on malls. Like, what lessons, like broad lessons, do you draw from your experience just here? You thinking, talking to an audience of kind of you, but 8 years ago, and you know, I'm just curious what lessons you would have, if any. From,
you know, first of all, when I tell this story, it's a long version you're making me do today. But when I tell this story, it sounds like there are, you know, not all of these pivots have been overnight pivots. First of all, that's very important. When we've shifted from cities to malls, while we were still, you know, selling to cities for a time, knowing that we had no repeat business. But as we're ramping up, you know, the sales cycle for shopping malls was longer. So as we're ramping up that, you know, awareness in these firms, we're still selling to cities. So we knew we were doing this pivot. You know, I had pivots where it was like black swan events like COVID. I had pivot where it was like, I need to eat, so I need to get money at one point. I don't have the luxury of time. And I had pivot that were more progressive. The piece of advice, it's really the question I had all my life is the difference between resilience, because everybody's telling you to be resilient, and obstination, like not being narrow-minded, basically. So you need to be resilient and focus and narrow-minded in a way. But you also need to take a step back and really realize, am I going in the right direction? And I'm still doing that, right? There is a samurai, a Bushido say, which is always keep death in mind. Like what happens if in 1 month from now, I have zero revenue, there is a black swan, all social medias are turning off. Like, what do I do? And it keeps me on my toes. Like I'm constantly challenging myself with business death, okay, to make sure that I am creating a venture which is solid, like which is made on solid foundations.
Perfect. Well, then I'll ask the last question, which is what we always end on. And I know this is sometime in through idea 4, but I'll still ask it, is when was the first time you felt like you had real product market fit?
To me, when the phone rings with people placing an order without you outbounding to them, It is when you have product market fit. So I had that with city councils. They were calling me, like they were like, okay, and they were all jealous because the other cities did it, and that is when I knew I had product market fit on that one. But we had, like, starting at pivot number 3, we had product market fit. Today we have a massive product market fit with management consulting firms. We have several product market fits now. But when the phone rings, and and it's like net new people you've never talked to, you're like, okay, I'm on something.
Well, we'll end it there. For a quick recap, you took us through the 5 pivots, the 5 main pivots, I should say, that led to where you are today. And I think through it, there's some lessons that come out of me. I mean, one of them is just be in the game. You kind of alluded to this early on, but had you built a business plan and done all these things, you wouldn't have been in the game. You wouldn't have discovered. And this was my question originally. Like, originally, you didn't have a unique insight. You just had a wouldn't it be cool live, and you just jumped into the game. But by being in the game, you actually started to unlock unique insights along the way. Like, okay, people care about their neighborhood. Later on, people care about their malls, which is not something that you would have known, at the beginning. That cities care about this sort of data came out only because you had been there in the first place and got the call. And so I think that's critical. And the second piece is knowing when to let go of one thing to go for another, and understanding the difference between, as you called it, resilience and effectively stubbornness. I mean, not giving up broadly versus narrowly. You can give up on the thing that's not really working to go after the thing that has a better shot at delivering real value without kind of pulling the plug on the whole thing and going to, to work somewhere else. So anyways, appreciate you sharing all that. It's been an amazing ride.
Thank you very much. Thank you for suffering from my French accent. I was looking for stubbornness as a word, and I said it in the French word with an English accent. That works sometimes when I don't have the word.
I got it.
You got it. You got it. Well, thank you. Happy if my story can help early founders. As I say to my team, keep pushing, guys. Keep pushing.